We know now that we have built more than 300,000 houses, new houses, in 1953.
Conservative Housing Minister Harold Macmillan hits his target, opening the last council house built that year.
Mr. and Mrs. Poulton will be the tenants.
The Poultons were living with their parents before they got this home. Last week, 64 years on, we took Olive Poulton back.
Mr. and Mrs. Poulton will be the tenants.
And what was it like that day?
Exciting, really. I'm very pleased to get our own house.
And the Minister of Housing himself beckons them in to take possession.
At that time, all parties thought the state had a duty to house those in need. Their neighbours got their council home, though, after doing someone a favour.
I was in the barn at Conservative Club again. He said, Bruce, and he handed me some keys. And he said, I want you to go and have a look at this property. And it was here, which is here now, 271 Maze Lane.
So you got the tenancy here,
Yeah.
You're doing a favour to a Conservative councillor?
Yes, but can you say that on television?
It was the return of men from the First World War that really obliged British local councils to house the poor, as in Becontree in Dagenham. This estate was soon the biggest housing scheme in the world.
What it was is homes for heroes, of course, after the war. People living in London lived in very substandard conditions, and I think the 1917 Russian Revolution has something to do with it as well.
Why?
Because I think the government were very perturbed about people possibly uprising against the government as they were in Russia.
So what, give them good houses, keep them quiet?
Keep them happy.
The local museum shows how in 15 years they built 25,000 homes over 4 square miles for 125,000 people, many brought here from the East End slums. Every house got a handbook with rules and advice.
Among the rules, they had to clean their windows once a week. And when it came to lavatory systems, they were told there is no need to pull the chain with a jerk.
And the streets and green spaces of this aspirational working class community nurtured a gallery of star names.
We like to say in Barking and Dagenham that we won the World Cup in 1966. The reason for that is Sir Alf Ramsey lived in Halbert Street, 10 minutes from here. Martin Peters lived in Raidens Road, just along from here, and Jimmy Greaves in Ivy House Road.
Post-war, though, the real trend was to replace slums and bond houses with high-density flats. Tower blocks soared, but few predicted the squalor of so-called sink estates, as I explored for Channel 4 News more than 30 years ago in Edinburgh.
Its graffiti-covered walls, its dark alleyways, its stinking staircases, today are monuments to the decline it's suffered since then.
Indeed, there are dozens of similar estates in inner cities around the country. In the 70s, almost half the nation were council tenants. Then came Margaret Thatcher's monumental change, giving tenants the right to buy their homes at big discounts.
Don't you think this is lovely? And the trouble Mrs. Patterson's taken with it. And Mr. Patterson's a handyman. He's put in all these.
And when Olive Poulton and her husband bought their home, it was a symbolic moment.
Nice to go up in the world.
What do you mean by nice to go up in the world?
Well, you know, some people look down on you, you know. Oh, you live in a council house, and that's not good. But when you own your own property, you do go up in the world a little bit.
Their next-door neighbours, like most of this street, bought too, though they feel slightly misled.
You had the right to buy, but the money that was taken from what you bought with was going to build other houses, other council houses.
That's right, yeah.
Which never happened.
Labour's Nye Bevan wanted council houses for everyone, not just those in need.
The minister pointed out the disadvantages of sharing homes.
That it's all right to have visits from your mother-in-law, but you don't want to live with her all the time.
More horrifying for Bevan still would have been the thought that these flats he once opened in Hammersmith might one day be sold. Just above Bevan's plaque, 70 years on, Maria Trinidad pays her private landlord £1,200 a month, more than twice what her council tenant neighbours pay. So she has to ask the state to help with her rent.
I have to rely on housing benefit, but housing benefit is a benefit which is difficult sometimes to get right. So what I usually do is that I use my bank overdraft in order to be able to cover my rent and my basic living expenses.
Can't you just go along to the council and ask to be put on the waiting list for your own council flat?
I won't be able to do that because I'm not considered to have a housing need because I currently live in a 2-bedroom flat.
In my opinion, there were winners and losers from the right to buy. The winners were the people who bought at a substantial discount. That gave them the key to social mobility to move away or to leave an inheritance to their children. And ironically, the losers are probably the grandchildren of those people that bought in the early days.
What?
They won't have the same right as their grandparents did to get a council house. Half the housing stock has been sold now, so they'll never ever get the same opportunity as their grandparents.
Under Blair and Brown's New Labour, Tory governments too, the building of new council homes dwindled to almost nothing. And for 30 years, councils have been encouraged to transfer their stock, its maintenance and the building of new social housing to private non-profit housing associations. But now, in Becontree and other parts of Dagenham and Barking, the local council hopes to recreate the early spirit of the estate through its brand new Right to Invest scheme for its tenants. They can buy a share of their homes, as much as 70%, with the council keeping the rest.
When the Becontree was designed and developed, you could have a plumber, you could have a butcher, you could have a nurse, you could have a doctor, all living on the estate. What we need to do is not get hung up like the government has over home ownership. We need to be able to give people the right to rent. We need to give people the right to invest in their community, and we need to give people the right to move. And that's really, really changed over the last 40 years.
Okay, Mum. But obviously there's a lot of memories here.
Olive Poulton and daughter Janice, who was born here, look back fondly on the house politicians provided them to rent, then buy.
Yes, it is emotional. We had many happy days here.
But should and could modern politicians give the same helping hand to today's young people that they had?